In the silent Fairfax manor, a boy confined to a wheelchair and a father devastated by grief carry the weight of a dark past. Everything changes when a housekeeper and her vibrant daughter cross the estate gates, bringing light where only pain had resided. Upon discovering a hidden locket with a plea for help, two children delve into a mystery buried 8 years ago. But the truth that emerges may not only free an innocent, it could also shatter everything that remains of that family. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us what city you're watching us from. We'll continue. I promise this will be the best story you'll ever hear. In the imposing Albright estate, situated in the exclusive neighborhood of Bel Air in Los Angeles, California, silence weighed like a constant shadow. The immaculate gardens and sumptuous architecture could not disguise the sadness that inhabited those walls. Gregory Albright, one of the biggest businessmen in the United States, owner of a billionaire fortune built in the technology sector, lived a torment that no amount of money could resolve. His only son, Matthew, had been born 8 years ago with a mysterious paralysis that baffled the best doctors in the country. The boy, confined to a wheelchair since birth, carried in his brown eyes the same melancholy that dominated the mansion. The tragedy had been twofold. On the same day Matthew was born, his mother, Beatrice, did not survive childbirth, leaving Gregory alone with a son who would never know maternal affection. "Mr. Albright, the test results have arrived from New York City." Regina's voice, his private secretary for over 10 years, echoed through the hardwood-paneled office. Tall, with her hair always impeccably pulled back in a bun, Regina was known for her relentless efficiency. And? Gregory barely looked up from the documents he was analyzing. At 45, his face already showed deep worry lines, and the graying hair at his temples betrayed the weight of sleepless nights. The specialists maintain the same diagnosis. There is no apparent cause for Matthew's condition. They recommend continuing with his current physical therapy. Gregory closed his eyes, weary. It was always the same answer. 8 years of consultations with the world's best specialists, and no one could explain why his son couldn't move his legs. "Dad." The childish voice interrupted his thoughts. Matthew was at the office door in his motorized wheelchair, his curious eyes observing the scene. "Hi, son." Gregory's expression softened instantly. "Do you need anything?" Mrs. Teresa arrived with her daughter. "You said I could show her my books." Teresa was the new housekeeper, hired after the retirement of Mrs. Constance, who had looked after the house for over 20 years. Gregory had almost forgotten that today was the day she would bring her daughter to see the mansion. "Of course, son. You can go. I'll be there in a few minutes to get to know them better." Regina watched the scene with a contained smile. "Do you want me to accompany Matthew?" "No need. He knows every corner of this house better than any of us." When he was alone, Gregory allowed himself a moment of vulnerability. From a locked drawer, he took out a photo frame with a picture of Beatrice, his late wife. Her smile, immortalized in that image, seemed to ask why he couldn't give their son the life he deserved. In the backyard garden, Teresa Oliver organized her belongings in the small maid's room, attached to the main mansion. At 38, her face bore the marks of a difficult life, but her eyes held the determination of someone who never gave up fighting. "Mom, can I go see the fish in the pond?" asked Gabrielle, her 9-year-old daughter. The girl had contagious energy and insatiable curiosity, characteristics that contrasted with the austere atmosphere of the mansion. "Yes, Gabby, you can. But don't wander too far and don't touch anything without permission." Gabrielle ran off, her curly hair bouncing in the wind. Teresa smiled, grateful for the opportunity to work at the Albright estate. The salary was generous, and the conditions included housing and private school for Gabrielle. A chance she couldn't waste after so many years of hardship in the outskirts of Los Angeles. On the way to the pond, Gabrielle found Matthew, who was observing the colorful fish from the edge of the wooden deck. She stopped, surprised to see the boy in a wheelchair, but her spontaneous nature quickly overcame any hesitation. "Hi, are you the owner here?" she asked, approaching without ceremony. Matthew looked up, surprised by the direct approach. He rarely had contact with other children, except for cousins who appeared on holidays, and treated him with thinly disguised pity. "My father is the owner. I'm Matthew." "I'm Gabrielle, but you can call me Gabby, everyone does." She knelt beside his chair, looking with fascination at the fish. "Wow, Japanese koi. I saw them in a school magazine." Is it true they can live for over 100 years? Gabriel's spontaneity caught Matthew off guard. In a few minutes they were talking like old friends. She showed no pity or discomfort with his condition, treating him as she would any other child. Observing the scene from the veranda, Gregory felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time. Hope. Seeing his son smiling, talking animatedly with the newcomer girl, was like witnessing a small miracle. Regina approached silently, following his gaze. It seems young Matthew has made a friend. Yes, it seems so. Gregory didn't notice Regina's slight frown as she watched the children. In the following weeks, a subtle transformation began to occur in the mansion. The presence of Teresa and Gabriel brought a vitality long absent from that place. Matthew, previously reclusive and silent, now eagerly awaited Gabriel's return from school to share books, games, and stories. Teresa proved to be not only a competent housekeeper, but also a comforting presence. With tact and discretion, she reorganized the house's routine, making it more welcoming. For Gregory, who was immersed in work as a way to escape pain, it was a relief to come home to a lighter atmosphere. Regina, however, observed these changes with growing apprehension. After a decade as Gregory's right-hand woman, she felt her territory being invaded. Private conversations with her boss, once frequent, became rarer, as he now dedicated more time to his son and, consequently, to the new housekeeper and her daughter. "You should check her references more carefully," she suggested one afternoon, as she presented Gregory with the company's financial reports. "Housekeepers come and go, but some cause more problems than solutions." Gregory looked up, surprised. "Teresa? She has proven excellent. Matthew has never been so animated. Precisely why I'm concerned. Young Matthew is vulnerable, impressionable, and this girl so spontaneous. It wouldn't be the first time people have approached this family seeking benefits. I appreciate your concern, Regina, but I believe you are being overly cautious. Teresa was recommended by Mrs. Constance, who served this family for 2 decades. Regina nodded, strategically backing down. "Of course, sir. Just looking out for the family's interests, as I always have." That same afternoon, while Matthew was showing Gabriel his collection of architecture books, an early passion he cultivated, the girl noticed something that caught her attention. "What's behind that wall?" she asked, pointing to a section of the library that looked slightly different from the rest. "What wall?" "There, it looks like a darker part, as if a passage or something was closed off." Matthew looked at the indicated spot. Indeed, there was a subtle difference in the wood's shade, something he had never noticed before, despite spending hours in that room. "It must be from the renovation my father did before I was born. This house is over 80 years old." Gabrielle approached the wall, touching the surface with curiosity. "It feels like there's something—" Her fingers felt a small protrusion. Pressing it, she heard a soft click. A small door the size of a shoebox opened at the base of the wall. The eyes of both children widened. "What could it be?" Gabrielle whispered, as she knelt to peek inside the hiding place. Inside the opening there was an intricately carved wooden box, covered with a thin layer of dust. Carefully, Gabrielle removed it from the hiding place and placed it on Matthew's lap. "Open it!" she urged, almost jumping with excitement. Matthew hesitated. "What if it's something private of my father's? Then we'll put it back and not tell anyone. But don't you want to know what's inside?" Curiosity won. With trembling fingers, Matthew opened the box. Inside, on faded red velvet, rested a golden locket with emerald details. "Wow, how beautiful!" exclaimed Gabrielle. "It looks like something a princess would wear." Matthew picked up the locket with reverence. Something told him that this object did not belong to his father, but to someone much closer to his heart. "I think it was my mother's," he whispered, opening the small side clasp. Inside the locket, besides a tiny portrait of a young, beautiful woman, there was a small folded piece of paper. Carefully, Matthew unfolded it. On it, in shaky handwriting, 3 words written in faded blue ink. "Help me, please." The locket trembled in Matthew's hands as his eyes fixed on those 3 desperate words. A shiver ran down his spine, and for the first time in his short life, he felt a tangible connection to the mother he had never known. "Help me, please." The handwriting was elegant, but the slanted letters and irregular stroke suggested urgency and fear. "Matthew, Gabriel's voice seemed distant. "Are you all right? You're pale." He blinked several times, returning to reality. "It was my mother's," he whispered. "I'm sure." Gabriel looked over his shoulder, reading the note. "Why would she write that? Who would it be for?" "I don't know." Matthew carefully closed the locket, feeling the weight of the discovery. "My mother. She didn't survive after my birth. At least that's what my father always told me." "I'm sorry," Gabriel murmured, placing her hand on her friend's shoulder. Despite her young age, there was a maturity in her eyes, perhaps a result of the difficulties she herself had faced in life. "Do you think we should show your father?" Matthew hesitated. His father rarely spoke about Beatrice, and when he did, it was with such deep sadness that the boy avoided the subject. How would he react to seeing that plea for help? "Not yet," he finally decided. "I want to understand better what this means before telling him. Will you help me?" "Of course." Gabriel's eyes sparkled at the prospect of an investigation. "We can be like detectives." At that moment, they heard footsteps approaching the library. Quickly, Matthew put the locket in his shirt pocket, and Gabriel pushed the box back into the hiding place, closing the small disguised door in the wall. Regina appeared at the door, her inquisitive gaze assessing the scene. "What are you two doing?" "Just showing Gabby my architecture books," Matthew replied, trying to sound casual. Regina frowned slightly. Her sharp eyes caught the faint blush on the boy's cheeks, a clear sign that something had happened. "Your father is looking for you, Matthew. It's time for your medicine and physical therapy session." "I'm coming." Matthew maneuvered his chair towards the door. Regina subtly blocked Gabriel's path. "As for you, young lady, I believe your mother needs help in the kitchen. Mr. Albright has important guests for dinner tonight." Gabriel nodded, but as she passed Regina, she felt an inexplicable chill. There was something in the secretary's gaze that made her uncomfortable. That night, while the adults dined in the main hall, the children made their first investigative foray. Taking advantage of Teresa being busy serving guests and Regina accompanying the business meeting, they returned to the library. "We need to examine this place better," Gabrielle whispered, her nimble fingers feeling the wall in search of other secret passages. Old houses like this always have secrets. Matthew took the locket from his pocket, observing it under the lamplight. The miniature portrait showed a young, beautiful woman with the same brown eyes he had inherited. "It's so strange. I feel like she's asking for help directly from me. But the note must have been written before you were born, right?" Gabrielle stopped her search, thoughtful. "If she hid this, it's because she was afraid of someone." "Afraid of whom?" "My father adored her. He still keeps photos of her in every room." Gabrielle shrugged. "I don't know. But rich people always have enemies. At least that's what they show on TV dramas." Matthew couldn't help but smile at his friend's logic. "Maybe we should look for more clues in her old room. Now it's my father's private office, but he'll be busy with guests for a few hours." Gregory Albright's private office, formerly the master bedroom, was a solemn environment rarely accessed by anyone other than himself and Regina, who organized his documents. The children entered with pounding hearts, feeling like true detectives in forbidden territory. "We should look in places no one would normally touch," Gabrielle suggested, looking around. "Behind paintings under loose floorboards, or inside books," Matthew completed, pointing to the shelf full of works his father rarely touched. For almost an hour, they discreetly explored the office. It was Gabriel who, upon removing a heavy volume of poetry from the shelf, noticed an irregularity in the wall behind it. "Matthew, come see this." A small cavity had been made in the wall, disguised by the bookshelf. Inside it, a metal box of the type used to store important documents. "It's locked," Matthew stated after trying to open it. Gabrielle bit her lip, thoughtful. "The locket. Try using the locket as a key." It seemed like an absurd idea, straight out of an adventure movie, but to their surprise, the back of the locket fit perfectly into a recess in the box's lock. With a soft click, the lid opened. Inside there was a stack of letters yellowed by time, all written in the same handwriting as the note in the locket. Letters from Beatrice Albright, dated from the period of her pregnancy, never delivered to the recipient. "They're for your father," Gabrielle whispered, looking over Matthew's shoulder as he opened the first letter with trembling hands. The letter, dated 7 months before Matthew's birth, began lovingly. but soon took on a tone of growing concern. "Dearest Gregory, something strange is happening. The medicines Dr. Maxwell prescribed for my pregnancy nausea make me dizzy and weak. I mentioned this to Regina, and she insisted it's normal that all pregnant women go through it. But I feel like something is wrong. I'm scared not for myself but for our baby." Matthew could barely breathe as he read. The next letter, written 2 weeks later, was even more alarming. "I found something strange in my afternoon tea, a white residue at the bottom of the cup. When I questioned it, Regina said it was just lime scale from the water, but yesterday I saw her putting something in my tea when she thought I wasn't looking. Gregory, I know you trust her, but I'm frightened. Please come back soon from your trip." Letter after letter, Beatrice documented her growing suspicion that she was being poisoned during her pregnancy. She spoke of dizziness, sudden weakness, and constant fear for the baby she carried. In the last letters, written a few days before childbirth, her despair was palpable. "I'm sure Regina and Dr. Maxwell are involved. I overheard them talking when they thought I was asleep. Something about doses and effects on the fetus. Gregory, I fear they want to harm our son. Please, when you read this, investigate. If something happens to me, don't let them harm our baby." The last letter, incomplete, ended abruptly with a smudge, possibly a tear that had faded the ink. "I'm hiding these letters and the locket you gave me on our wedding anniversary. If you're reading this, something terrible has happened. Don't trust—" Matthew let the letters fall onto his lap, stunned. Silent tears streamed down his face as the terrible truth unfolded. "Your mother was being poisoned," Gabrielle murmured, also crying. "And she believed it would affect you. Maybe that's why you can't walk." A noise in the hallway made them both freeze. Quickly, Gabrielle helped Matthew put the letters back in the box, leaving only one, the most revealing, to show his father. They closed the box and put it back in its hiding place, positioning the book back on the shelf. They had barely finished when the door opened. It was Teresa, looking worried. "Children, what are you doing here?" "This office is Mr. Albright's private space. Sorry. Mom, we were just looking for a book Matthew wanted to show me," Gabrielle improvised, trying to sound natural. Teresa didn't seem convinced but didn't press the issue. "Come on, it's late. The guests are leaving and you should be getting ready for bed." As Teresa guided Matthew back to his room, Gabrielle followed a few steps behind, feeling the weight of the locket her friend had discreetly given her to keep. They had discovered something terrible, something that could change everything. But how could they tell Gregory the truth without putting Matthew in danger? That night, as the mansion plunged into silence, 2 young hearts remained awake, burdened with the weight of a secret buried for 8 years. In the gloom of his room, Matthew stared at the ceiling, his mother's words echoing in his mind. For the first time, he felt that his condition was not an accident of fate, but the result of something much darker. In the small alcove attached to the kitchen, where she slept with her mother, Gabrielle held the locket firmly in her hand. She was only 9, but she understood the gravity of what they had discovered. Regina, the trusted secretary, and the family doctor had conspired against Beatrice and her unborn baby. But why? The answer, they both suspected, lay in the hidden letters. And tomorrow, they would decide how to reveal the truth to Gregory Albright, a man who had lived for 8 years with a lie about the tragedy that had destroyed his family. From the main corridor, a shadow moved silently. Regina walked back to her room at the back of the mansion, her cold eyes fixed on the office door the children had left. There was something in her expression, a mixture of suspicion and apprehension, that would have chilled Matthew and Gabrielle's blood if they could have seen her at that moment. Breakfast at the Albright estate proceeded in an unusual silence. Matthew barely touched his pancakes, his restless eyes alternating between the door and the clock. Gabrielle, who usually chattered non-stop, remained equally quiet, exchanging meaningful glances with her friend. Regina, always attentive, noticed the change in the children's behavior. "Something wrong with breakfast, Matthew?" she asked, her tone artificially sweet. "Teresa can prepare something else if you prefer." Teresa, who was serving orange juice, looked at the boy's almost untouched plate with concern. "Are you all right, dear? Are you feeling unwell?" "I'm fine," Matthew replied, forcing himself to take a bite of pancakes. "Just not very hungry today." Regina's gaze lingered on the boy for a few seconds longer than usual, as if trying to decipher some hidden secret in his expression. Then she turned to Gregory, who was distractedly reading the newspaper. "Mr. Albright, don't forget you have a video conference with the Japanese investors at 10 o'clock. And Dr. Maxwell confirmed Matthew's routine appointment for next week." Hearing the doctor's name, Matthew and Gabrielle exchanged alarmed glances. Dr. Maxwell, the same man mentioned in Beatrice's letters as an accomplice in the poisoning. "Dad," Matthew suddenly called out, gathering courage. "Can I talk to you after breakfast? In private?" Gregory lowered the newspaper, surprised by his son's serious tone. "Of course, son. Something important." "Yes, very important." Regina intervened softly. "Matthew, your father has a very tight schedule today. Perhaps you can talk tonight when he returns from the office." "No, Regina," Gregory gently cut her off. "I always have time for my son. We can talk in my office after breakfast, Matthew." The secretary nodded, but her expression betrayed displeasure. "As you wish, sir. In that case, I'll make some calls while you talk." Half an hour later, in the private office, Gregory watched intrigued as Matthew and Gabrielle entered together. He had decided to allow the girl to accompany his son, realizing it was important for Matthew to have her nearby. "So, what's so important that it couldn't wait until tonight?" he asked with a gentle smile, sitting opposite the children. Matthew took a deep breath, searching for the right words. How to explain to his father that his entire life had been built on a lie? How to reveal that the woman he trusted most could be responsible for the tragedy that had tormented him for 8 years? "Dad, we found something." "Something of Mom's?" Gregory's expression subtly changed, a mix of surprise and pain crossing his eyes. "Your mother's?" With trembling hands, Matthew took the locket and the letter they had set aside the night before from his pocket. He extended them to his father, who took them with an expression of absolute perplexity. Where did you find this?" Gregory's voice faltered as he recognized the locket he had given his wife on their 10th wedding anniversary, just a few months before her passing. "In a secret compartment behind the library bookshelf, and there are more letters, Dad, many more." As Gregory read the letter, his face lost color. His fingers squeezed the paper so tightly that Matthew feared he would tear it. When he finally looked up, there was something in his eyes the boy had never seen before, a contained fury mixed with deep, renewed pain. "How long ago did you find this?" The voice came out controlled, almost a whisper. "Yesterday," Gabrielle replied, speaking for the first time. "We wanted to understand what it meant before showing it to you." Gregory stood up, walking to the window. For long minutes he remained silent, his body tense like a rope about to snap. Finally he turned to the children, a steely determination on his face. "Show me the other letters." "All of them." Guided by Matthew, Gregory removed the book from the shelf and found the hidden metal box. Using the locket as a key, he opened it and took out the stack of letters. As he read each one, his face transformed, from initial disbelief to anger, and finally to a pain so profound that the children had to look away. "Beatrice," he murmured, his voice choked with emotion. "You tried to warn me and I wasn't there." When he finished the last letter, Gregory remained silent for long minutes, his eyes fixed on an invisible point, as if processing a revelation beyond comprehension. Then slowly he put the letters back in the box and locked it again with the locket. "You did well to show me this," he finally said, kneeling before Matthew to be at his son's eye level. "But I want you to promise me one thing. Don't tell anyone about what we've discovered. Not Teresa, not anyone in the house. Understand?" The children nodded solemnly. "What are you going to do, Dad?" Matthew asked, worried by the grim expression on his father's face. "I'm going to find out the truth," Gregory replied, placing his hand on his son's shoulder. "And I'm going to fix all of this, no matter how long it takes." That same afternoon, Gregory called an urgent meeting in his office. Present were Regina and Dr. Maxwell, a middle-aged man with aristocratic airs, who had been monitoring Matthew's health since before his birth. "Thank you for coming on such short notice," Gregory began, his tone surprisingly calm. "We need to discuss something I recently discovered about Matthew's condition." Regina adjusted in her chair, seemingly at ease. "Something in the new test, sir?" "Not exactly." Gregory walked to the bookshelf and retrieved the metal box. He placed it on the table between the three of them. "I found some letters from Beatrice. Letters she wrote during her pregnancy, but which were never delivered. Dr. Maxwell adjusted his glasses, visibly uncomfortable. Letters? I don't understand how this relates to young Matthew's clinical condition. Let me read a passage to you, Gregory. Opened one of the letters and began to read aloud. I'm sure Regina and Dr. Maxwell are involved. I overheard them talking when they thought I was asleep. Something about doses and effects on the fetus. The silence that followed was absolute. Regina remained impassive, but her eyes had narrowed slightly. Dr. Maxwell, on the other hand, visibly paled. Mr. Albright, the secretary, was the first to speak, her voice controlled. Beatrice was under severe stress during her pregnancy. Hormones can cause paranoia in some women, especially in high-risk pregnancies like hers. It's true, the doctor quickly added. Mrs. Albright developed a rare form of gestational psychosis in the last few months. I even mentioned it to you at the time, do you remember? She had delusions, believed people wanted to harm her. Gregory watched the two for a long moment, his face an impenetrable mask. Then slowly he took another letter from the box. That would explain the hallucinations. But it doesn't explain this. He extended a small plastic bag that was also stored in the box. Inside there were several white pills. Beatrice saved some of the medications you made her take, and according to this letter, she managed to send a sample to an independent laboratory, using her cousin's name. The analysis result is also here. He placed another paper on the table, a laboratory report indicating the presence of toxic substances in the pills. This is ridiculous, Dr. Maxwell protested, standing up abruptly. Obviously, these are not the medications I prescribed. Regina remained seated, her expression now serious. Gregory, think carefully about what you're implying. We have served this family faithfully for years. Why would we do something like this? That's what I intend to find out now. Gregory pressed a button on his desk phone. You may come in. The office door opened and two men in suits entered. One was clearly a plainclothes police officer. The other, an older man with a professional demeanor, carried a medical bag. This is Detective Miller, Gregory introduced. And this is Dr. Paul Rivers, forensic toxicologist. They are here to help us clarify this situation. Regina's face transformed. The mask of calm she had maintained until then disintegrated, giving way to an expression of fury and despair. You don't understand, she hissed, slowly standing up. You never understood. What, Regina? What did I never understand? That she wasn't worthy of you. The secretary's voice rose laden with contained emotion. Beatrice never loved you like I do. 15 years by your side, Gregory. 15 years dedicating every minute of my life to you, while you only had eyes for her. Gregory recoiled, stunned by the revelation. You poisoned my wife out of jealousy? It was her idea. Regina pointed at the doctor, who now looked about to faint. Maxwell needed money to cover gambling debts. I needed you. It was a perfect solution. That's a lie, Dr. Maxwell protested, desperate. She manipulated me. She said they were just mild sedatives to keep Beatrice calm during pregnancy. The plan was never to kill her, Regina continued, ignoring the doctor's protests. Just to make the baby be born with problems. You would need someone to support you, to help you care for a disabled child. And I would be there, as I always have been. Gregory staggered, leaning on the table to keep from falling. The revelation was too monstrous to assimilate. But something went wrong during childbirth, the detective continued, who had been previously informed by Gregory about his suspicions. And Beatrice didn't survive. An accident, Regina murmured, her gaze now distant. She had a weak heart. It shouldn't have happened that way. And then, you continued to poison my son? Gregory's voice was just a horrified whisper. Small doses in the vitamin supplements, Regina confirmed, her tone almost casual, as if discussing a routine procedure. Just enough to maintain the paralysis. If he improved, you wouldn't need me anymore. Dr. Maxwell collapsed into the chair, burying his face in his hands. I only did the initial prescriptions during the pregnancy. After that I wanted to stop, but she threatened me. Detective Gregory turned to the officer, his voice now firm despite the shock. I think you've heard enough. The officer nodded, stepping forward with handcuffs. Regina Fields, you are under arrest on suspicion of attempted murder, negligent homicide and poisoning. Dr. Antonio Maxwell, you are also under arrest for the same crimes. As the detective recited their legal rights, Regina kept her eyes fixed on Gregory, a strange calm replacing her previous fury. "One day you'll understand," she said as she was handcuffed. "Everything I did was for love of you." Gregory turned his face away, unable to bear that sick gaze. "Take them out of here." When the door closed behind the detainees, Gregory collapsed into his chair, physically exhausted and emotionally devastated. The toxicologist approached, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. "Mr. Albright, if what she said is true about the vitamin supplements, we need to immediately analyze all the medications your son takes." Gregory nodded, still dazed. "Do whatever is necessary, doctor, and are there chances of reversing the damage?" The doctor hesitated, cautious. "It's impossible to say without detailed examinations. But if the paralysis was chemically induced, and not from physical damage at birth, there is a possibility that, with the correct treatment, there might be some recovery." For the first time in 8 years, a spark of hope ignited in Gregory Albright's heart. Hope mixed with a searing pain as he understood the unnecessary suffering his son had endured for so long, all because of a sick obsession. That night, after the turmoil of Regina and Dr. Maxwell's arrest, Gregory sat beside Matthew's bed. He told his son, with carefully chosen words, what they had discovered. The boy listened in silence, his small hands tightly clutching his mother's locket. "So, there's a chance I might walk one day?" he finally asked, his voice small but full of hope. "There is, son." Gregory held the boy's hands. "I don't know if it will be a complete recovery, but we will do everything in our power. Your mother, she tried to protect you until the very end." Silent tears streamed down Matthew's face. "I wish I could have known her." "She's here," Gregory touched his son's chest where the locket rested, "and it was she who guided us to the truth through these letters. Now we can start to fix what was broken." Through the slightly ajar door, Teresa and Gabrielle watched the scene, their own eyes welling with tears. The painful discovery had revealed a terrible truth, but it had also paved the way for healing. A healing that, perhaps, could finally bring peace to the Albright estate and its inhabitants. News of Regina and Dr. Maxwell's arrest spread quickly among the staff of the Albright estate. Rumors of conspiracy and poisoning circulated in whispers through the corridors, but Gregory maintained discretion, explaining only that serious irregularities had been discovered in their professional conduct. To Teresa, however, he decided to tell the whole truth. As the housekeeper, and directly responsible for Matthew's care, she needed to be aware of the situation. "My God," she murmured, horrified, when Gregory finished explaining the plot that had been orchestrated against his family. "How can someone do something so terrible to an innocent child?" "Obsession," Gregory replied simply, the exhaustion evident on his face. "Regina developed a sick fixation on me over the years. In her twisted mind, removing Beatrice and incapacitating Matthew was the only way to ensure I depended on her permanently." Teresa wiped away a tear that had escaped. "And what happens now with Matthew? Is there a possibility of reversing the damage?" "That's what we're going to find out." Gregory checked his watch. "Dr. Lucy Harper will arrive in a few hours. She's a neurologist specializing in central nervous system damage, recommended by the forensic toxicologist. We'll need to do complete exams to understand the extent of the damage and if there's a possibility of reversal." "Count on me for whatever is needed," Teresa offered sincerely. "Matthew is a wonderful boy. He deserves this chance." Gregory nodded, grateful for the support. "Thank you, Teresa, and thank you also for your daughter. It was Gabrielle who found the locket that led us to the truth. Without her, we might never have discovered what really happened." In the living room, Matthew and Gabrielle leafed through an architecture book, but it was evident that both their attentions were far away. The atmosphere in the mansion had changed drastically in the last 24 hours, the tension of the revealed secret replaced by an anxious anticipation. "What if it doesn't work?" Matthew asked suddenly, his voice betraying the fear he tried to hide. "What if I never walk even after all this?" Gabrielle closed the book and looked directly at her friend. "Then we move forward. You are much more than your legs, Matthew. You're the smartest and bravest boy I've ever known." A slight blush covered Matthew's cheeks. No one besides his father had ever called him brave, but I wanted so much to be able to walk, to run in the garden, to climb the viewpoint to see the sunset, to visit my mother's grave without needing someone to push my chair. "I know," Gabrielle squeezed her friend's hand. and we'll do everything we can to make that happen. But remember, what matters isn't whether you walk or not. It's who you are in here." She touched his chest, exactly where Beatrice's locket rested under his shirt. Dr. Lucy's arrival transformed the mansion into an improvised medical center. Exams were performed, blood samples taken, and long sessions of neurological evaluation filled the following days. Matthew faced everything with surprising determination for an 8-year-old, inspired by the possibility of finally understanding what had happened to his body. After a week of intense investigations, Gregory, Matthew, Teresa, and Gabriel gathered with the neurologist in the office to hear her conclusions. Dr. Lucy, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a confident demeanor, arranged several CT scans and test results on the table before beginning. "Mr. Albright, Matthew," she began, her tone professional but compassionate, "I have analyzed all the results and consulted with specialist colleagues. What we found is unusual, but we finally have a clear explanation for Matthew's condition." She pointed to one of the images. The substances that were administered during gestation and subsequently through vitamin supplements did not cause structural damage to the brain or spinal cord, as we initially feared. What they did was interrupt the neural connections between the brain and the lower limbs, creating what we call a neurochemical block. "And is that reversible?" Gregory asked, tightly holding his son's hand. The doctor hesitated, carefully choosing her words. "Potentially. We are not talking about a physical injury that needs to heal, but about neural connections that have been chemically suppressed for years. Theoretically, with the cessation of the poisoning and an intensive rehabilitation protocol, there is a possibility of re-establishing these connections." "What's the chance of success?" Matthew's voice sounded small but firm. Dr. Lucy looked directly at the boy, respecting his courage in asking that difficult question. "To be completely honest, Matthew, I cannot give an exact percentage. Each case is unique, and yours is particularly complex due to the prolonged exposure to toxic agents. If I had to estimate, I would say there's about a 20% chance of significant recovery." 20%? Gregory seemed disappointed. "It's more than zero," Matthew replied, surprising everyone with his maturity. "Before, we thought there was no chance at all." Gabriel, who had listened in silence, spoke up. "And what would the treatment be, doctor?" The doctor smiled gently at the curious girl. "An intensive multidisciplinary protocol. Daily neurological physical therapy, electrical muscle stimulation, aquatic therapy, and a new experimental medication that helps restore neural connections. It won't be easy, and it may be painful at times." "I'm willing to try," Matthew declared, his determination unwavering. "Excellent," the doctor smiled. "I recommend we start immediately. I will assemble a team with the best specialists. We will need to adapt part of the mansion for the physical therapy sessions, and Matthew will have to follow a strict regimen of exercises and medication." "Cost is not an issue," Gregory affirmed. "I will do whatever is necessary to give my son this chance." In the following weeks, the mansion's routine completely transformed. One of the rooms was converted into a physical therapy center, with specialized equipment installed under Dr. Lucy's supervision. A team of health professionals visited the house daily, working with Matthew in exhaustive sessions that often left him exhausted and, at times, in tears of frustration. The beginning was the most difficult. After 8 years without movement in his legs, Matthew's muscles had significantly atrophied. The first sessions focused on maintaining and increasing muscle mass through electrical stimulation, while the experimental medication began to take effect in his nervous system. "I can't feel anything," Matthew lamented after 2 weeks of treatment, when the physical therapist tried to provoke some response in his feet. "Maybe the doctor was wrong." "It takes time, son," Gregory tried to encourage him, although he himself began to question if the hope had not been premature. It was Gabriel who became Matthew's emotional pillar during that period. Every day after school, she would rush to the mansion to accompany the physical therapy sessions, inventing games to distract her friend during the most painful exercises, reading stories to him during electrical stimulation treatments, and most importantly, never allowing him to give up. "Do you know the difference between impossible and possible?" she asked one day, while Matthew rested after a particularly difficult session. "What?" "Impossible is just possible that no one has tried hard enough yet." Matthew laughed despite his exhaustion. "Where did you read that?" "I just made it up," Gabrielle confessed with a mischievous smile. "But it makes sense, doesn't it?" A month passed without visible signs of improvement. The medical team maintained cautious optimism, explaining that neurological changes often happened invisibly before manifesting physically. Gregory, however, began to prepare for the possibility that the treatment would not work. One night, while accompanying his son to bed after a long day of therapies, Gregory sat on the edge of Matthew's bed. "Son, I want you to know something," he began, his voice gentle. "Regardless of the outcome of this treatment, I am incredibly proud of you. The courage you have shown, it's inspiring." Matthew distractedly played with his mother's locket, which he now rarely took off his neck. "Do you think Mom would be proud too?" "I'm absolutely sure," Gregory replied, emotion tightening his throat. "She fought so hard to protect you. I believe she is still watching over us somehow." "Sometimes," Matthew confessed in a whisper, "when I'm almost asleep, I feel like she's here in the room, watching me." "It's silly, isn't it?" Gregory shook his head, stroking his son's hair. "Not at all. There are more things in heaven and earth than we can comprehend, son." That afternoon, after a long talk with his father, Matthew asked to see Gabrielle. When the girl hesitantly entered his room, he immediately extended his hand in a silent apology. "I was an idiot," he admitted. Gabrielle squeezed his hand, a small smile forming on her lips. "You were, but you're still my best idiot friend." The reconciliation brought new life to the treatment. With Gabrielle's renewed support and Gregory's deeper understanding of the emotional ups and downs of the process, Matthew rediscovered his determination. It was during this period that Teresa revealed to Gregory a secret she had kept for years, a connection with Beatrice that would forever change the dynamic between the families. On a quiet evening, while Matthew and Gabrielle watched a movie in the living room, Teresa asked to speak privately with Gregory in the office. "There's something I need to tell you," she began, visibly nervous. "Something about me and about Beatrice." Gregory indicated an armchair, intrigued. Teresa rarely initiated personal conversations, always maintaining the professionalism that characterized her work as a housekeeper. "I knew your wife," she revealed, after taking a deep breath. "Many years ago, even before she married you." "How?" Gregory leaned forward, surprised. "You never mentioned this before." "Because I didn't know if I should." Teresa clasped her fingers in her lap, trying to organize her memories. "It was almost 15 years ago. I lived in rural Virginia, married to a violent man. Charles was an alcoholic and frequently assaulted me. One night, after a particularly brutal beating, I fled with only the clothes on my back and a few dollars. I had nowhere to go, no family, no one." She paused, her eyes lost in painful memories. "At the bus station, while waiting for any bus that would take me away, a young woman sat beside me. It was Beatrice. She noticed my state, the poorly hidden bruises, the frightened look. Instead of ignoring me like so many others, she offered help. She took me to a shelter for abused women where she volunteered, helped me get new documents so Charles couldn't find me, and even lent me money to start over in Los Angeles." Gregory listened in silence, a new dimension of his late wife's personality revealing itself through that account. "Beatrice was like that," he murmured, emotional, "always taking care of others, even strangers." Teresa nodded. "We kept in touch for a few years. When I heard she had married a successful businessman, I was happy for her. Beatrice deserved all the happiness in the world. But you never mentioned this connection when you applied for the job here," Gregory observed without accusation in his voice. "Just curiosity. At first I didn't make the connection. The ad only mentioned Albright family. It was only when I arrived for the interview and saw her portrait in the hall that I realized. I was shocked, not knowing whether to mention it or not." "Why did you decide not to tell?" Teresa hesitated. "I feared it would seem opportunistic, that you would think I was taking advantage of an old connection to get the job. And then there was another reason for my silence." She opened her purse and took out an envelope yellowed by time. She extended it to Gregory with trembling hands. "I received this a few weeks before she passed. I never fully understood what it meant until now, with everything we've discovered." Gregory opened the envelope carefully. Inside, a letter written in the same elegant handwriting he knew so well. Dearest Gregory, he began to read aloud, his voice choked with emotion. If this letter reaches you, it means my fears have been confirmed, and I am no longer by your side. It also means that somehow Teresa managed to fulfill the request I made of her, and brought you here. I am eternally grateful to her for that. This place is my legacy, not just for our son, but for all people who need a chance, hope. The Rebirth Project was born from my desire to give back all the blessings I received in life. You, our unborn son, and the opportunity to make a difference in the world. Inside this box, you will find important documents, medical diaries I kept during pregnancy, recording every strange symptom, every unusual reaction to the medications prescribed to me. There are also reports from a private investigator I hired when I began to suspect something was wrong. I know it sounds like paranoia, but something in my heart told me Regina was not who she seemed to be. There are also documents about experimental treatments for neurological damage. I have been studying this intensely in recent months, fearing that if my suspicions are correct, our son might be born with complications. I found promising specialists, innovative protocols. I hope you never need to use this information, but if it is necessary, it is here. Lastly, I want you to know that I never doubted your love. If I didn't share this project with you before, it was only because I wanted it to be a complete surprise. Seeing your face when you discovered this place was always a dream for me. I imagine our son's first birthday would have been the perfect time to bring you both here. I love you beyond life, beyond time. Forever yours. Beatrice, inside the box, exactly as described, were the meticulously kept diaries, detailed reports about Regina and Dr. Maxwell, and an entire folder dedicated to innovative neurological treatments, many of which were only just beginning to be recognized by current medicine. The most surprising, however, was a USB drive labeled Evidence. Gregory connected it to the laptop he had brought, discovering dozens of audio recordings. Beatrice, foreseeing the danger, had hidden recording devices in various rooms of the mansion, capturing incriminating conversations between Regina and Dr. Maxwell. One particular recording chilled his blood. Regina in a phone conversation with the doctor. The baby will probably have permanent neurological damage with the dosage we are administering. She's already suspicious, but soon it won't be a problem anymore. After childbirth, we will continue with smaller doses for the boy, just enough to keep him dependent. Gregory will need me, and he will finally see that I am the only one who has always been by his side. With trembling hands, Gregory turned off the audio. The calculated malice was almost impossible to assimilate. How had he not noticed? How had he allowed those people to remain so close to his family for so many years? Hours later, when he finally regained his composure, Gregory met with the others in the farm's garden. Teresa immediately noticed that something had changed. There was a renewed determination in his expression, mixed with deep pain. I found irrefutable evidence, he explained in a low voice, only for Teresa and Dr. Lucy to hear, while the children played some distance away. Beatrice documented everything, foresaw everything, and most importantly, she left information that could be crucial for Matthew's treatment. Dr. Lucy examined the medical documents with growing interest. This is extraordinary. Beatrice was years ahead of her time in some of these researches. There are protocols here that have only recently begun to be clinically tested. She specifically mentions a doctor, Dr. Eleanor Vance, an American neuroscientist working in Switzerland, Gregory added. According to these notes, she was developing a revolutionary treatment for restoring neural connections damaged by toxins. Dr. Eleanor Vance, the doctor's eyes widened. She is a legend in the field of regenerative neurology. Her work on neural regeneration won the Lasker Award 2 years ago. If Beatrice was in contact with her, we need to find her, Gregory decided. If there's anyone who can help Matthew recover completely, it's her. At that moment, a shout from Gabrielle interrupted the conversation. Mr. Albright, Mrs. Teresa, come see this. The adults ran towards the children, who were near a small fountain in the center of the garden. Matthew was sitting in his wheelchair, a radiant smile illuminating his face. Dad, look, he exclaimed, extending his right leg and slowly flexing it with visible control, before doing the same with his left. It's getting stronger. I can control it much better. Dr. Lucy immediately knelt, examining the movements with clinical eyes. This is remarkable. His progress has accelerated significantly in the last 24 hours. It's this place, Teresa whispered, emotional. It's as if Beatrice is here, helping him to heal. Gregory watched the scene, an indescribable emotion tightening his throat. His son, moving legs that for 8 years had remained still, in the exact place his mother had created with so much love. Beatrice always believed in miracles, he murmured, more to himself than to the others. And perhaps this is the greatest of all, her love reaching through time to save our son. That night, while everyone slept in the main farmhouse, Matthew remained awake, contemplating the starry sky from his bedroom window. His mother's locket rested in his hand, her photo glowing softly under the moonlight. "Thank you, Mom," he whispered into the night. "I'm almost." "There, I'm going to walk to you, I promise." Across the hall in another room, Gregory also remained awake, studying the documents found in the safe. Among them, a letter addressed to Matthew, to be opened when he turned 18, and a series of drawings Beatrice had made for the baby's room, all showing landscapes of the Appalachian region, as if she wanted her son to know that place even from a distance. One detail in particular caught his attention. In several of the drawings, a curly-haired little girl appeared holding a boy's hand. On the back of one of them, an enigmatic note: "The bonds that destiny weaves are invisible until the right moment." Looking at that drawing, made years before Matthew's birth, Gregory couldn't help but notice the incredible resemblance to Gabriel, as if, in some mysterious way, Beatrice had glimpsed the future, a future where her friend Teresa and her unborn daughter would be fundamental in the life of the son she feared she might not be able to raise. "You always saw further than all of us, my love," Gregory murmured, touching the drawing with reverence. "And you're still watching over us even now." The return to Los Angeles brought new energy to Matthew's treatment. The discovery of the Rebirth Project farm and the legacy left by Beatrice had transformed not only the perspective on the boy's recovery, but also the dynamic between the two families, who now recognized themselves as one. Gregory immediately contacted Dr. Eleanor Vance in Switzerland, sending all of Matthew's documents and medical records. The renowned neuroscientist, upon discovering the connection with Beatrice, with whom she had corresponded years earlier, agreed to evaluate the case and, a week later, arrived in the United States specifically for this purpose. "The protocols your wife researched were visionary," Dr. Eleanor explained during her first meeting with Gregory and Dr. Lucy. "Beatrice initially approached me with hypotheses about neural regeneration in cases of exposure to neurotoxins. At the time, these were just theories, but in recent years we have been able to prove many of the principles she intuited." "So, there's real hope for Matthew?" Gregory asked, trying to contain his emotion. "More than hope," the doctor replied, flipping through the results of the latest tests. "The progress he has already shown is extraordinary. With the protocol we have developed, I believe we can increase the chances of significant recovery to 70 to 80%. The news was met with cautious optimism. No one wanted to create excessive expectations, especially for Matthew, who had already faced so many disappointments. But it was impossible to ignore the promising signs: the increasing control over leg movements, the gradual return of sensitivity, and most importantly, the boy's unwavering determination. The new treatment proposed by Dr. Eleanor was intensive and multifaceted. It combined advanced physical therapies, non-invasive neural stimulation, and a personalized drug cocktail aimed at unblocking the neural connections that had been suppressed by years of poisoning. "It will be difficult," the specialist warned. "There will be pain, exhaustion, possibly moments of regression. We need Matthew to be emotionally prepared for this journey." To the adult's surprise, it was Matthew himself who responded, with a maturity that tugged at the heart. "Doctor, I spent 8 years thinking I would never feel my legs. Any pain I feel now will be a reminder that I am alive, that I am getting better. I am ready." Gabriel, who was watching the conversation, squeezed her friend's hand with pride. "And I'll be with you every step of the way." As the new treatment began, an unexpected letter arrived at the Albright estate. It came from Regina's lawyer. She had died in prison due to aggressive cancer, discovered weeks after her detention. The former secretary, feeling her end approaching, had left a complete confession and some information she deemed important for Matthew's treatment. "Gregory, The letter read, in shaky handwriting very different from Regina's always impeccable script. "When you read this, I will be gone. I do not ask for forgiveness, for I know what I did is unforgivable. But there is information you must have. Beatrice discovered the poisoning in the 7th month of pregnancy. She began taking antidotes on her own, obtained through a pharmacist friend. This partially saved the baby. Without these measures, Matthew would likely have suffered severe brain damage, not just paralysis. Your wife was more intelligent and stronger than any of us imagined. There is something else you should know about the girl, Gabrielle. Her father was not just any man, as Teresa probably believes. He was Hector Fields, my brother, a scientist who conducted controversial cognitive enhancement experiments. He fled the country when his laboratory was investigated, but he left the results of his work in a safe at the Federal Reserve Bank. The key is hidden in the lining of the box where you found the locket. These documents may contain relevant information for Matthew's treatment. I do not expect redemption, only that this information helps to repair a small fraction of the harm I caused. Regina. The revelation about Gabrielle explained her extraordinary intuition, her ability to make connections that escaped others, and the emotional maturity that always surprised adults. Teresa, upon discovering the truth about her daughter's father, was initially shocked, but soon understood that this only confirmed what she had always known. Gabrielle was special in a way that transcended conventional explanations. The documents mentioned by Regina, retrieved with the found key, indeed contained valuable information. Dr. Hector Fields' studies on neuroplasticity and neural regeneration perfectly complemented the research Beatrice had collected, providing Dr. Eleanor Vance with the missing pieces to perfect Matthew's treatment. "It's as if all paths converged," the doctor commented, impressed by the coincidences that intertwined the lives of those people. Gabrielle's father's research, Beatrice's intuitions, even Regina's final confession, all of this gives us a chance that very few patients in similar situations would have. Meanwhile, in the mansion's physical therapy room, transformed into a state-of-the-art rehabilitation center, Matthew made slow but steady progress. The pain was often unbearable. The exhaustion sometimes brought him to tears. But with each small victory, a supported step on the parallel bars, a few seconds of balance without support, hope grew. 3 months after the start of the new treatment, on a sunny Sunday afternoon, the moment everyone had been waiting for arrived. The family was gathered in the mansion garden. Gregory, Teresa, Gabriel, and Dr. Lucy, who had become a constant presence in their lives. Matthew, in his wheelchair, watched a small blue butterfly that had landed on the fountain. "I want to try," he announced suddenly, looking at his father. Everyone understood immediately. Gregory approached, helping his son stand from the chair while Teresa positioned the specially designed walker in front of him. Matthew held onto the bars, his arms trembling with the effort to support his weight. "Slowly," Dr. Lucy instructed, attentive to every movement. "Focus on maintaining balance first." For long seconds, Matthew remained motionless, just feeling the weight of his own body on legs that, for 8 years, had been mere useless appendages. Then slowly he moved his right foot forward. 1 step. He took a deep breath, concentrating intensely, and moved his left foot. 2 steps. Silent tears streamed down the faces of everyone present as Matthew continued, determined, 1 step at a time, crossing the small space between the wheelchair and the garden bench. 3, 4, 5 steps. His legs trembled with effort. Sweat dripped from his forehead, but his eyes remained fixed on the goal. 6, 7, 8. When he finally reached the bench and collapsed, exhausted, having taken exactly 9 steps, the garden erupted in applause and tears of joy. Gabrielle was the first to hug him, followed by Teresa and finally Gregory, who couldn't articulate words through his emotion. 9 steps, Matthew whispered, when he finally caught his breath. 1 for each year I waited for this moment. A week later, in an intimate ceremony, Matthew fulfilled his promise. Walking slowly with the aid of crutches, he traversed the path to Beatrice's grave in Hollywood Forever Cemetery. Each step was an act of love and determination, a tribute to the mother he had never known, but whose presence had guided his recovery. "I did it, Mom," he said, when he finally stopped before the white marble headstone. "You helped me find my way back." Gregory, a few steps behind with Teresa and Gabriel, watched the scene with an overflowing heart. His son, standing before his mother's grave, represented the miracle Beatrice had always believed was possible. "She knew this day would come," Teresa said, her voice choked with emotion. Somehow she always knew. In the months that followed, life at the Albright estate completely transformed. Teresa and Gabriel, at Gregory's invitation, moved in permanently, occupying a wing that had been specially renovated for them. Not as employees, but as family, the family Beatrice had foreseen they would become. Matthew continued his rehabilitation, now walking more securely, using only a cane for support. His interest in architecture blossomed into genuine talent. Inspired by his own experience, he began to develop accessible space designs, dreaming of a future where he could transform the world for people like him. The Rebirth Project Farm, maintained exactly as Beatrice had conceived it, became a frequent refuge for all of them. Gradually, Gregory expanded the project, honoring his wife's legacy by helping disadvantaged communities in the Appalachian region. On a particularly significant afternoon, as the children played in the farm's garden, Gregory and Teresa watched them from the veranda. "Do you know what impresses me most?" he commented. "How everything fell into place, how each piece of the puzzle brought us here. Beatrice's letters, the locket, you and Gabriel entering our lives exactly when we needed you." Teresa smiled, her gaze following her daughter, who ran alongside Matthew, now able to keep up with her in slow but steady steps. "Beatrice always said there are no coincidences, only encounters marked by destiny. Do you believe she somehow planned all this? That she knew. I don't know if knew is the right word. Perhaps sensed. Some souls see beyond the veil that separates the present from the future." Gregory contemplated the locket he now wore close to his chest, the exact match of the one he had given Beatrice, found among her belongings at the farm. "However it happened, I am eternally grateful for this miracle, not just for Matthew's recovery, but for finding you both." In the garden, Matthew stopped to rest under the shade of a mango tree. His smile was radiant as he watched Gabriel picking wildflowers to adorn the dinner table. "Gabby," he called, "do you think life always gives us second chances?" The girl reflected for a moment, her extraordinary intuition seeking the truest answer. "I think life gives us as many chances as necessary for us to learn to love. And some people, like your mother, love so deeply that their love continues to create chances even after they are gone." Matthew looked at the locket on his chest, the last physical connection to the mother who had saved his life twice, first by protecting him from poisoning during gestation, and then by leaving the clues that led to his cure. "So she's still here, isn't she? In every step I take." "In every step," Gabriel agreed, holding his hand, "and in every new beginning." From the garden where it all began, where a simple excavation revealed the locket that would forever change the fate of that family, flowers bloomed in profusion. Spring had arrived, bringing with it the promise that, even after the longest nights, the sun always shines again, and in the depths of the earth, the roots of those flowers intertwined, invisible to the eyes, but fundamental to the beauty that bloomed above, just like the bonds of love and courage that, even when we cannot see them, sustain every new chance that life offers us. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope Matthew and Gabriel's story has touched your hearts. For more emotional narratives like this, we have prepared a special playlist with equally captivating stories. Find it here by clicking the button on the left. If this journey of overcoming and hope touched your soul, be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video. Every day we bring unique stories that explore the complexity of life and the power of love. Share in the comments which moment of this story moved you the most and suggest themes for our next narratives. Here we believe that every story can transform lives, just as Beatrice's love transformed her son's life beyond time.